Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the State of Hoops podcast. This is your co-host, Todd Schlekeway, along with my fellow co-host, Nate Malchow. Chow, how are you doing today?
Schleck, it's been a good weekend. We're getting to mid-February, and we're recording this on Super Bowl Sunday. So we're going to have a full shift from the end of the football seasons into prime time for basketball. Here we go.
Yeah, such a great time of year as the anticipation builds for March Madness here, which is now only 3 short weeks away. Before we dive into this episode's main content, I think it's important that we circle back, Chow, on the last episode. We talked about how special that was, given how you and I grew up and how Northern State really was a bond for our friendship and helped spur our love for basketball. And it was so great reminiscing with Shane Warwick and Keith Moore, and so appreciative to our viewers and listeners for the feedback that they continue to share. And we even had confirmation that Coach Olson watched the episode. And so what a special memory to relive. I know it was special for you. Kind of a thank you to Aberdeen also.
No question. And just the feedback after that episode has been just awesome. I was getting texts from people that I know and that I have deep-rooted relationships through basketball with, whether it's back home in Aberdeen or just in South Dakota in general. Just the feedback on that has been awesome, and just shows you the type of guy that Coach Olson was as a coach and is, and the relationships that he's built with his players, and just what it's all about, essentially, and just a celebration of Coach, and it was just great to hear from a lot of different people, whether it's through text calls, seeing people at basketball games, through our content with State of Hoops on social media. So awesome job with Shane Warwick and Keith Moore, and in that tribute. So fun times.
That's what I love about this podcast, Chow. We kind of have a blank canvas to explore some of those stories and pay tribute to individuals who've had a lasting legacy and impact on South Dakota basketball. And speaking of South Dakota basketball, what a week it was on the hardwood. Chow, I just came off calling 6 games as a color commentator over the weekend at the Sanford Pentagon at the Heritage Classic for Midwest Sports Plus, which is a streaming app, and kind of put a plug in for Midwest Sports Plus. You can subscribe and receive all their content. They have a huge footprint and presence in the state of Iowa, and they've brought that this season to South Dakota, and it's only going to expand and grow. They do a great job covering all levels of South Dakota high school basketball, both boys and girls. And because of this podcast, Nate, I have had an opportunity this season to be a color commentator for some of the games, and it's really helped me watch teams, and it's provided some good content for you and I to talk about. And so I've really enjoyed opportunities to work with Zach Borg. And yesterday I worked with Jason Andera for 6 consecutive games at the Sanford Pentagon. I know you've done some of that in the past with Midco as well, Nate. It's really fun. It's harder than it looks, but it feels like the more you do it, the more comfortable you get and the more concise you get in your commentary. So I've really enjoyed that this season.
No, and I've had an opportunity to listen to a couple of your games with that, Schleck, and you're doing a great job. I don't know how you have a voice today after doing 6 games yesterday. That's a lot. I think I did 2 in a row back at some of those classics with Midco with Jason and Dara, and it's harder than it looks sometimes when you're calling a game, because the research that goes into it, and we're fortunate enough to, when we do that, we're working with a guy like Jason and Dara, who's pro and does all the research and has all the stats and coaches' input and all those things ready. It's a little bit, it's a lot different than this right here, because we can talk stories. There's no on-court action in front of you, but everything happens so fast in a basketball game, and just providing that input and giving that analysis is something that you get better at when you do more games and everything too. So, and I think Brad Newitt talked about that a little bit when we had him on a couple episodes ago as well. But no, keep up the great work, and always good to hear your perspective during those games, Schleck.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot on the podcast about how basketball always comes full circle in South Dakota. And so fast forward to yesterday, I'm sitting up in the press box at the Sanford Pentagon as a color commentator for a game coached by Jay Drake, who I played against in high school, who our dads coached against. Jay was
Yeah.
my assistant for several years when I was playing at the University of Sioux Falls. And then the next game is the Lyman girls, and Cody Vollmer is the head coach. And Cody was my rival in high school with Mobridge and Lyman having some epic battles, and now is a friend. And so it's just another one of those stories that we talk so much about, Nate, about how basketball unites people. And there always seems to be 1 degree of separation with South Dakota basketball.
Well, I think it's less than 1 degree of separation sometimes, just if there is such a thing. No, it is, basketball is one of the great uniters in this state, and just the appreciation that this state has for it at all levels. And it's fun, especially when you get to be our age, in our late 40s at this point, and just being able to run into people that we've been friends with for years, and now they're passing along that love to their own kids or their communities. And no, it's awesome.
And some of the games I had an opportunity to call, I want to highlight a few of the South Dakota kids who had standout performances and teams. So the Centerville girls played Spirit Lake, Iowa, who made the state tournament last year in Iowa, who was ranked in Iowa and came out with a victory. So that was a big win for the Centerville girls program. Izzy Eide had 26 points. She's a sophomore who has already eclipsed the 1,000-point mark in her career. So congrats to Centerville girls. The Vermilion boys had a great battle with Western Christian based out of Hull, Iowa. For those of you who know anything about Western Christian, they're kind of the Sioux Falls Christian of the state of Iowa in their class. And Vermilion came out on top. Trey Hansen went for 40 points yesterday, Nate, at that
40.
during that game, and was just special. He was 6 for 7 from the three, got to the free throw line at will, and Western Christian couldn't stop him. So congratulations to Trey Hansen. And then another game that was great to call was two really solid programs that are well coached. Of course, everyone knows about the DeSmit Bulldogs and what they've done in Class B in recent years, and the tradition at DeSmit. And then Sioux Valley, we talked about Bill Vincent last week on his 500th win. They had a game that went right down to the wire, and a player by the name of Brady Hiltonen for Sioux Valley went for 4, including the game-winning 3, and he was special last night. And DeSmit, how fun was it for me to watch Grant Wilkinson, a 6'9", 6'10" post player who can move, and I'm sure the SDSU football coaching staff can't wait to get him on campus because he is going to be something else on the gridiron. But just wanted to highlight some of the South Dakota kids and teams that I had an opportunity to see play, and look forward to seeing how all those teams that we called yesterday do here moving forward and as they get into postseason play.
Wow, some great individual performances out there, and some great matchups as well. 40 points, 34 points. Schleck probably made your player of the game choice pretty pretty easy with those. But no, and that's February 7th. So districts postseason plays right around the corner, and it's going to be fun to see some more of those performances as we get into March.
Chalk Talk.
For our Chalk Talk segment this episode, we're going to do a very short segment, Nate, and I wanted to get your thoughts and overall philosophy on rebounding. Having played with you and coached with you, and I know that your favorite coach at the college level is Tom Izzo. You're a big Tom Izzo guy. Look at the Sparty hoodie right there. Talk a little bit about rebounding, just overall philosophy, and what you did kind of with your teams as a philosophy to instill that rebounding prowess and the toughness that it takes to be a good individual player as a rebounder and a rebounding team.
Well, I'll just give you a little bit of background on that. I mean, just something that was emphasized in high school when I played at Aberdeen Central, in college, playing at Concordia College, and then I had a chance to go to grad school and serve as an assistant during grad school with Scott Nagy and the South Dakota State Jackrabbits back in 2000, 2001. And that's probably when I really got introduced to the importance of rebounding and statting that, and being able to read stat lines and associate those with winning basketball, getting on the glass. I just think it's something that started then, and then carried on in my coaching career, and something I would hope that if people look back on the teams that I coached, that they could see that that was emphasized, because it's something that we took a lot of pride in. One stat that comes to mind, started working with Coach Nagy, is he always preached game being plus 10 on the glass. And if you're going to out rebound a team by 10, that's going to associate winning that basketball game. And when I got into coaching, we had a mantra, and my players would tell you up on the erase board in our pregame notes. I always put plus 10 minus 40. We out rebound a team by 10. We hold them under 40. We're going to win that basketball game. And just something that, we drilled, and things we tried to get stick within that mentality of our teams. But it's something that you got to work on. It's something that you have to emphasize. It's something that you have to stat, so you can give that feedback to your players and show them the why with it right there too. But I think when we get to games at this time of the season, when you get in tight games, most of them are probably going to be in the half court, getting that defensive rebound or getting that offensive rebound and keeping possessions alive is a premium. I always said, unless we're shooting lights out 70% from the field, I can go right to that stat sheet check, and I can tell you how hard a team is working by how many offensive rebounds that they're getting, because they're getting the glass and they're making things happen.
Yeah, and I just wanted our viewers and listeners to kind of hear your perspective on rebounding. It is a metric that really does decide a lot of games, and
Yeah, one thing I want to add on rebounding too, just I mean, from a coaching perspective, our philosophies were to send four to the glass and check back one person. And that's something that has to be drilled by coaches too, because you have to identify the four that are going to the glass, the one person who we called our check back. You have to identify them. And that's something in practice that we had to have a coach watch all the time, because we would take a risk by sending four to the glass, but we felt that that was going to be an advantage to us and create opportunities. But we had to have one person getting back, because if you don't, you're giving up transition going to the other end. But we would specifically have coaches watch our efforts in games. I'd have a coach watch if they're one of the four designated rebounders and they're not going to the glass. We're going to address that with that player, because you have to have four getting there, crashing the glass. And especially, I mean, from an X and O standpoint, that worked great against zones. You had a zone, 1-3-1 zone, maybe especially a junk defense. Sometimes you get a triangle and two, or you get a box and one defense playing against you. You crash four of the glass. Good luck boxing that out if you got four people on a mission getting to the boards. But again, you have to have the one person check back. So if you do give up the defensive rebound, you have somebody back to help take away transitions. No, just a little tidbit on that. And I know coaches are emphasizing that right now, because the possession game becomes big. Coaches, good luck on the boards as we get to postseason.
and thanks for sharing that, Nate. You have the success as a former coach, helping Scott Nagy at SDSU, and then when you worked under Fred Tibbetts and won those state championships, then when you took over your own program at Washington and won 3 state titles. So appreciate you sharing that. We're going to transition now to several sponsor ads. Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors. For over 30 years, Pat and Pam Tiefenthaler of Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors have been trusted names in and around the Sioux Falls community. Building relationships that last, they're humbled and honored to serve buyers and sellers with care and expertise. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or navigating a move because life happens, Pat and Pam will walk beside you, guiding you every step of the way. Call Pat or Pam at Tiefenthaler Homes with Hague Realtors today, your trusted partners in Sioux Falls. Visit tiefteam.hague.com or call 605-321-0550.
And if you're looking for trusted financial guidance close to home, visit Charles Schwab's Falls, South Dakota branch, your local investment firm. Led by Lonnie Struckman and Zach Hansen, financial consultants with over 25 years of combined experience, their team is here to help you reach your financial goals. Whether you're planning, investing, or just have questions, Lonnie, Zach, and their team put clients first every time. Call 605-231-4844 or search Schwab Sioux Falls at schwab.com to book your appointment today. Charles Schwab, own your tomorrow.
give and go.
We're going to have some fun for the give and go segment this episode. We're going to have some back and forth banter on what Nate and I are calling the best of questions. And so hang with us here. We're going to have a little fun with this. Nate, first topic, the best high school pep band or pep band song that you can recall during your playing era or coaching era.
Well, a lot of great memories with pep bands and what they bring to the environment at a basketball game. Some of the Aberdeen Central Classics in the Aberdeen Civic Arena. First off, you got to look at that arena, and underneath our basket that we warmed up on the east side of the arena, that whole section, at least probably half to 2/3 was taken by a pep band. So you have multiple students bringing that energy to the game, and that music is blaring right into us as we're warming up. So we would come out, and the first song that they would play would be Championship, which is at the top of my list. That's the old CBS sports theme song. And then they go right into the Notre Dame Victory March, which was our school song at that time. But some of the other favorites growing up there, We Got the Beat, Go-Go's, pep band cover. Hush by Deep Purple was one of those. Land of a Thousand Dances, I think was another one. So those are classics, and you hear those sometimes this day if you're at a college game. But those were the ones at the top of my list. How about you, Schleck?
Well, I'm biased too. In Mobridge, we were the home of the Tigers. We had a great pep band all through my dad's coaching career, my playing career. We would run out to Eye of the Tiger, and it was awesome. But my ultimate favorite high school pep band and song was the Miller Rustlers. Every time you'd make that trip to Miller and play the Rustlers at the Miller Armory, they would run out to the William Tell Overture Lone Ranger theme song, and it was awesome. And let me tell you, keep in mind that they had some teams, the era when Brian Schwartz and Nick Johansson and Chad McGow played together when they made those state tournaments, and those were just epic athletes for a Class A size school to have on one roster. The place went bananas. It was always a packed house at the Miller Armory. And that William Tell Overture, you'd hear those trumpets. We'd still be in the locker room. The Rustlers would hit the floor first, and you start hearing those trumpets on the Lone Ranger theme song. It was so cool. So that would be the one that rises to the top for me.
Well, I remember going to the Corn Palace, and I mean, they'd have a trap set. They'd have a guy on the bass guitar, I mean, to supplement the pep band. And they had that place rocking right on the stage they would play, which was kind of behind where the benches were at the Palace. But for some reason, I remember going to Brookings in Josted Gym, and they would always play the Superman theme song when Brookings came out. Theme song from the movie, John Williams classic back in the day, but they would play that Superman song. And I always remember that. I always thought that was unique. So great memories.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. The next best of topic, the best gym or most memorable gym or gyms you played in as a high school player in South Dakota.
Best gym? To me, it starts and ends with the Aberdeen Civic Arena. I think our viewership has heard that enough from me or people that know me. My favorite venue, hands down. Special era, growing up in the ESD play, being able to play in the Watertown Arena, being able to play in the Huron Arena, the Corn Palace. Here we go to TF Riggs, and that place would just be packed, and kind of a unique structure there with their gyms as well. But those are the ones that stick out in terms of venues, and a lot had to do with the crowd. I mean, the energy and the people make those venues special too, and those are packed houses that we played in front of.
Yeah, I'll throw a couple best gyms that I played in high school. Of course, I was from Mobridge, Class A size school. I think I'll start with the Lyman Gardens in Presho. You walk into this cathedral, and it's a small, intimate, curved ceiling. And on one end, you essentially have church pews as seats on the one end, and then the other end is a stage, and then the bleachers are on the long sides, and the bleachers don't go up very far. So for a Class A, they're Class B now, but at the time of my era, they were A. It's not a very big gym, but boy, a lot of history there, and that place would get loud in a hurry. And so, of course, that is also known, Nate, as a one of the in the rotation for a host of the annual South Dakota State amateur basketball tournaments where you and I even played a state am.
Yeah.
And so that's one of them for me. Another one I'll share is the Winter Armory. I always liked Winter. Jay Drake may get mad at me for saying this, but we usually won there. And nice place. It had a upper deck, lower deck, and there was no other gym that we ever played in that had a pop machine in the visiting locker room. I remember there was like a Dr. Pepper pop machine right in the locker room. And I what a random thing. You have a pop machine in your visiting locker room. So that's something you don't see every day. And then give you my homer choice. And a lot of our viewers and listeners probably have never had a chance to attend a game there or play there, but Mobridge played in the Shear Howe Auditorium, and the Shear is named after Bill and Jim Shear, who wrestled in the 1988 Olympics from Mobridge. Bill actually got the bronze medal, and then Howe is named after the famous South Dakota artist Oscar Howe, whose murals of Native American images are on both sides of the gym. And then we have a stage on one long side, and then a lower deck and upper deck, a pretty big gym. But the best part about it, it was kind of like a Boston Garden field because we had dead spots on the floor, the wood floor. And as a home team, we practiced there every day. So we kind of knew where they were. But so many great memories at that place. Now Mobridge plays at their school gym. And like so many of these old gyms, you just don't have the character of those old gyms and those iconic venues. And Sheer Howe Arena, Nate, was built as a Works Progress Administration building, a WPA building during the FDR administration. So that's how old we're talking, but it was just an iconic special place for me to play growing up. So that's my homer pick.
Yeah, and those are great venues that you're talking about there too. I've been in a few of them. Didn't have a chance to go to Lyman Gardens until the 2005 state amateur tournament, and we played there, and just what a memory. And that's probably for another episode as well, but played there, and just you had just a bunch of the great basketball players that I looked up to or that I was able to play with converging on Presho and played in the Lyman Gardens, and it was everything that people had talked about in terms of the stories. But a pop machine in a locker room, that's a classic. So grab a Dr. Pepper at halftime, fuel up, and go back out and play. Oh, that's funny. So great list there, Schleck, for the venues that we've played in. And I could go on and on about places that I've coached in because I'm a little biased towards Sioux Falls, Washington, and some of the games that was able to coach at Washington at home as well. But so many that we've coached in, but fun to get into the places that we were able to play and fortunate enough to play at.
All right, next topic. The South Dakota gym with the best popcorn, Chow.
Huron Arena. Remember going there as a kid. I thought it was great then in the 80s when I was following my brothers playing, and Mark Murphy was our assistant coach and still probably the best post coach I've ever been around. But Mark was a Huron graduate. He's got ties there now with grandsons playing for Huron. But Murph would always tell us we got to get to make sure that we get a little popcorn when we go to the Huron Arena. So we did that, and probably wasn't the best pregame meal, but how could you turn down the Huron Arena popcorn? Great stuff.
And I will second that, Nate, because I was just in the Huron Arena last week. My son's in the Roosevelt program, and Roosevelt played Huron at the arena. I hadn't been in the Huron Arena. I figured it out on the drive up. 16 years it had been since I had last been in the Huron Arena. And it's still such a cool place to watch a game. But I go down at halftime of the JV game, and I get a popcorn, and they ask me if you want butter, and it's movie theater style popcorn, Chow. Wasn't too salty. It had all the butter. So I second your motion, and I'm going to go with the Huron Arena with the best popcorn at a gym in South Dakota.
Great call.
Okay, next one. What is the best state tourney game that you watched? So this one is more as you and I as fans, maybe growing up, Nate. We didn't play or coach one. This is the best state tourney game you've watched.
1989 Class AA state championship. Rapid City Stevens versus Aberdeen Central at the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center. Eric Piakowski played for Stevens along with Mike Jones, Todd Williamson, Tommy Doyle. I mean, people remember these names. Lyle Pagel coached that team back in '89. Aberdeen Central had Eric Klein, Jeff Oakes, Jay Kusler, Chad Masters, Jeff Oakes, who we talked about a couple episodes ago. My brother Mark was on that team as well. Simply the greatest game that I have ever watched in South Dakota as a fan. Game went back and forth, packed house. Stevens had the Raider crowd rocking, and Aberdeen Central had a ton of people there. But this is the game at the very end. Game was back and forth. You had great performances. As you know, Piakowski had 20-something, and then he went and played at Nebraska and then played in the NBA for years too. Eric Klein got hot in the second half and just put on a show. And his last second three-pointer, and if you watch it to this day, you still it's right on, and that's going in, but it hit the front of the rim, the back of the rim went up and went out. So heartbreak for the Eagles. I was a fifth grader, bawling my eyes out in the stands. But when I watch that video, even to this day, it's the best game that I've ever seen in South Dakota, hands down. Schleck, how about you?
Yeah, this one rises right to the top. I had the privilege to being at the Barnett Center at the 1992 State B championship game. And of course, I still believe this is South Dakota's version of Hoosiers, Chow. Warner versus Harold. And the game had everything. Warner had the great Chuck Welke Jr., coached by his dad, Chuck Welke Sr., the Roselle connection there at point guard. And Warner's 10 miles from Aberdeen and had just the whole community of Warner was there. But everybody not wearing Monarchs colors was against Warner that night. And Harold came in. Their enrollment was barely enough even then to maintain a school. I think they had 8 kids on their roster, maybe 9. One of them was like a 7th or 8th grader. And it was one of the best team and individual performances I've seen. Eric Lappy, of course, our fans are familiar with what he did that night, but the game had everything. It had momentum swings. The crowd was wild. And another interesting nugget about that game, Nate, is that year, if you remember back then, there was a rotation on which classes got televised because remember, A was the weekend before and double A and B were the same weekend. So they would rotate. One of the interesting things is that 1992 game between Warner and Harold, the state championship game, was not on statewide TV, Nate. And so a lot of people like to fabricate and say they were at a gym years and years later or at some game, but I was there with my dad and Pat Morrison from Mobridge, and I'll never forget it. And just so our listeners and viewers are aware, we will do a series in the podcast here later on. We'll have a best game series, and we'll do deep dives into some of the games that Nate mentioned, that I mentioned, and we know there's more, but that would be mine, Nate. 1992 Class B state championship, Warner versus Harold.
And a lot of people still talk about that game too. And a lot of that's a good point that you bring up in terms of how the tournaments were televised back then. The A would always get that first weekend, and then it'd go back and forth between the double A and the B. Don't forget that night in 1992 was the same night that Watertown won the state tournament with Jason Sutherland's reverse slam out in Rapid City that got the TV coverage that year. But that Warner Harold game in that community, people still talk about that one to this day. And I know that there's tape out there. Eric Lappy's brother, Jordan Bauer, is the AD out at Rapid City Central and a colleague and a good friend. So him and I have told many stories, or he has told me many stories about that game as well. But good announcement there too with the great South Dakota high school basketball, the greatest games. And that will be a new series that we will be starting. These 2 games will certainly be in that, and we'll also have others to share as well.
Well, that was fun. Thank you for sharing some back and forth banter with me, Nate. We're going to transition to several more sponsor ads at this time. Park Bench Tournaments. Looking for the ultimate basketball experience in the Black Hills? Look no further than Park Bench Athletics, your host for premier youth tournaments all winter long. Join Park Bench Apparel for epic events starting in December and going through April. With over 100 teams from South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, and Colorado at each tournament, there is the perfect competition for any level. Check out Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills or hang out at the Watiki Indoor Water Park with your team when not playing. You can sign up today at parkbenchapparel.com or find their tournaments on the Tourney Machine app and let the games begin.
And if you love South Dakota hoops, discover the legacy at the South Dakota High School Basketball Hall of Fame, a nonprofit dedicated to preserving our state's rich basketball history for generations to come. Visit their incredible exhibits at the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls and explore stories, milestones, and legends online at the sdbbhof.com website. From iconic players and coaches to unforgettable teams, this is South Dakota basketball. Again, check out the organization's website and be a part of the tradition.
And I'd also like to acknowledge Insight. They're the folks who helped us with the visual assets to bring this podcast to life. And I can tell you, they don't just make things look good. They dive in, ask the right questions, and come back with great ideas that actually work. Whether it's branding, campaigns, or creative strategy, Insight has a way of helping businesses stand out and connect with people in meaningful ways. If you're looking for a partner to make an impact on your business, check them out at insightmarketingdesign.com.
Show out, shout out.
And as we wrap up this episode of the State of Hoops podcast, Nate, it's time for the popular show out, shout out segment, and the floor is yours for show out, shout out.
Well, I'd like to start. We had some sad news this week with the passing of Jeff Filling, who was a longtime play-by-play announcer for Augustana. I think it went back 40 years for all of Augustana sports and the voice of the Vikings. And we're going to miss Jeff. He was just a fun guy to be around. Did an amazing job and with his craft and promoting Augustana University. Jeff was the MC for the South Dakota Sports Hall of Fame for many years as well, but he was also kind of the host of the Sioux Falls Sports Club for many years, and that's how I got to know Jeff. And Sioux Falls Sports Club was a lunch every Monday during your season that you would go to the VFW and have lunch, and the coaches would talk to really an audience, anybody that wanted to come and hear from the coaches. Jeff was he was awesome. I mean, he was you talk about a sense of humor and a witty personality. He just had a lot of fun with that, and got to know him well through that. But just more importantly, his kindness. Every time I was able to catch up with him, we're talking about family and going through things such as that. Shout out to Jeff Filling. You're going to be missed, and in the sports community, in the Sioux Falls community, and beyond. So, a shout out to Jeff.
Yeah, I'll second that, Nate. Thoughts and prayers to the Filling family. What a impact and legacy Jeff left on everyone who had an opportunity to know him. My shout out, Nate, as we wrap up here, is Ashlyn Copel. Most basketball fans in the state have probably seen this news by now, but she was selected to play in this spring's 2026 McDonald's All-American game on the girls' side. She's on one of the girls' rosters. It's one thing to get nominated. She was selected to play in the game.
First ever from South Dakota.
First girls player ever to have this opportunity. And I believe, if my sources are correct, only the second South Dakota player ever on both the boys and girls side, with, of course, Mike Miller being the only boy to ever play in the game. And another neat story is Ashlyn's on the same team because they released the rosters as Chad Greenway's daughter, Madden Greenway. So there's a couple South Dakota connections there, but really want to give a shout out to Ashlyn. Thank you for representing South Dakota on the big stage. Congratulations for that selection.
Huge positive news for South Dakota with Ashlyn's selection. Think of all the great players that we've had come through in girls basketball and then going on to play at the collegiate level and doing that. And she's the first in that game. One person I also have to mention, we got Mike Miller as the representative for the boys. Ashlyn Copel now with the girls. Don Seiler did coach one of those teams a couple years ago. So just some people who have been involved in that McDonald's game, but the most recent, Ashlyn Copel. So congratulations.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of State of Hoops podcast. Just a reminder, you can follow us and please do subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMedia, and Amazon Music. And please also track us on social media. You can follow us on YouTube, X, and Instagram. Until next time, yours in hoops. This is your co-host Todd Schlekeway, along with my fellow co-host Nate Malchow. Have a great day.